So thank you so much for joining us at Making the Cut. Darrell, our guest today, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Darrell Kopke, I'm a longtime apparel veteran, and for the last 10 years have been faculty with the University of British Columbia Sauder School of Business in the Entrepreneurship, Sustainability, and Innovation department. I also oversee a deep technology program called the Creative Destruction Lab, which is a mentorship program that we'll probably talk a little bit about. And I have a great family, live in Vancouver.
Nice. Very nice. All right. I wanted to get started a little bit. Tell us a bit about your background and when you started out, because it is interesting and it's fascinating, and you were part of one of the greatest explosions Vancouver has had in apparel. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I grew up in Montreal, and I had an undergrad degree in marketing from Concordia University. A couple of years later, after having spent some time in some retail expansion of a Future Shop into Quebec, I moved to Hong Kong, and that's when I got into the apparel business. I actually sold zippers for 4 years, and for a Finnish company called Salmi Vetokachu, and spent 2 years in Hong Kong selling it to big brands, and then set up the North American sales office in my mid-20s for the company. And that's when I met Chip Wilson, the founder of Lululemon, before there was even a Lululemon. He owned West Beach, and I became a zipper supplier to West Beach and was the first ever zipper supplier to Lululemon when Lululemon was founded. So was there really at the genesis, was at the grand opening party of the company called Lululemon. And as a supplier, went back and did my MBA at UBC Sauder. And then after a little while later, joined Lulu as the original general manager at one store, sixth employee at head office. There was Chip. We had a designer, a production person, a logistics person, the store manager, and myself. Early days, and my job was to grow the company.
What was this? What was North American office of the zipper company that you had? What was it called?
The company was called Salmi, and it's a Finnish company. And we competed against YKK, which is the biggest company in the world, which is a Japanese conglomerate, has about 50% of the world market share. And so I figured that the best way forward and the highest return on my time investment was to sell into snow and snowboard and ski wear apparel, because every ski outfit or snowboard outfit has 16 zippers. So, we spent a lot of time in the trade shows, and that's where I met Chip on our way to a trade show, as West Beach was a snowboard wear company.
Yeah, no, the reason I'm asking is I had factories back then, and I
Mm,
used to manufacture for Chip at West Beach.
nice.
Yeah, and if you want to hear a funny story, back in what year did you start working at Lulu?
2001.
Okay, so in 2003, and I think maybe I've told you this, when I sold my assets, I was going to move to New York. I bumped into Chip at Meinhardt's, and he's like, "Lulu's really growing. Come and manage the manufacturing." I chose New York, which is why I call my noodle my $20 million dog. I think I would have been 2003. What it would have been 20 employees back then. They hadn't gone public yet, so.
No, a few years before going public. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. But that's okay. So that's interesting. So when Lulu opened, you went into the grand party, and then how did you start working there? You just had a conversation with Chip, and it was just people you know.
No, we'd always been in touch, and as I continued with my MBA, we had visited and uh, had conversations, and they never could afford somebody to take on the expansion at the time. It was really figuring out what Lululemon was. At the grand opening party of the company called Lululemon, there was only 5 Lulu products. There was a bra, a tank top, a crop slip boogie, and shorts, and one pair of pants. And it wasn't even the Groove pant at the time. So it was a different company. We bought Danskin products at the grand opening party. They had, Gaia Ultimate Frisbee or Taibo shorts. They had cleats for Ultimate Frisbee. This was like a different kind of company. There's books and VHS cassettes. So it was a different kind of company than it is even 5 years later. By the time I joined, they had figured out what the company was and had moved across the street to the current location on West 4th in Kitsilano in Vancouver. And they were ready to basically start expanding. And Chip always wanted to expand, leveraging wholesale and franchise in order to get economies of scale manufacturing. And that was the plan at the time. So When I joined late 2001, the store manager had joined the day before me, and I was, supposed to grow beyond one store.
And so, I mean, I just find Lulu and the whole thing fascinating. I think it's one of the greatest business stories there is. And I would love to know from you, like, what did you see that you think others didn't? And by the way, I was one of those that didn't see it. So I didn't see it. And that's why I think I find it so phenomenal when someone, especially Chip, who saw it and, it took that while for it to catch on. He saw it and he kept that vision. And that's, aside from willpower, that's kind of
So many people didn't see it. My MBA classmates laughed when they would walk into the store and see me folding yoga pants. It's not uncommon because it was non-traditional. At the time, there was no yoga apparel, which was the whole thing. The reason this generated an entire category of apparel was because so many elements of this conversation called Lululemon were absolutely new. That was the fabric technology. That was the fact that the target demographic hadn't been catered to before. The fact that this niche activity only had 2, 3 yoga studios in Vancouver at the time. So many elements of it were new. That new is scary. So what was it? I would visit the store when it was on the second floor across the street from the current location, the original location, and I would see an ideal customer profile buying the product. I would see very fit, active, affluent women buying the product, the early adopters. And by the time I joined, they had crossed the chasm to repeat sales. Within a year, 2002 to 2003, there was so many monumental achievements that happened. But by December 2000, what I can say is we were the hottest Christmas present for our target demographic in Vancouver.
when I used to do my 2-day seminars on how to start a business back in 2005, I would say they're going to study Lululemon in business classes, marketing classes for theses, because what he did, I feel, was genius, fluke, whatever you want to call it. But like, for example, I was already living in New York when he did the, whoever shows up to the first 10 people or 100 people that show up to the Robson opening of the Lulu store naked, get $100 or whatever the prize
Yeah.
was. I mean, I remember seeing the pictures in, the New York Post. I mean, the hundreds of millions of dollars of free marketing and advertising that got was phenomenal. Phenomenal. Was that you?
Well, it was partly my fault. It was October 2003. I had received 10 weeks earlier, I had received an email with a picture of a decathlon store opening in Germany, where the glass doors were basically a lot of naked people were pressed up against it to try and get whatever prize that they would get by running in free. And I sent it over to Chip and tongue in cheek, jokingly said we should do this. Well, the next week there was a full page ad in the Georgia Straight that said anyone who shows up naked would get a free outfit. And then he ran it 2 more times, except he limited it to 30 people because he knew he'd probably get hundreds of people to come naked. And it was early morning in October. It was a really cold morning. We opened the store at 8 o'clock that day, and it was the grand opening for Robson. And we had, at least 50 people come through. Naked people were coming in all day to get naked. It was quite a fun party. We broke records that day, and we had international press. So it was one of those really crazy things that we could do at the time, and we would do at the time, just because we didn't take ourselves too seriously. And I think that was part of the fun vibe of Lulu at the time. It's very, very different now, and we can talk about that. But ultimately, back then, Lululemon didn't take itself so seriously. It was really about laughing at ourselves and enjoying the ride. And I think we did that well.
Yeah, I think you guys did it amazing. And so do you feel the culture took on legs of its own, as they say here? What Lulu was doing in its early days with community building, with culture within the company, was really leaps and bounds ahead of what was actually happening in any other apparel company anyway in British Columbia. So, and I've asked Chip this too, like, do you think growing to 1,000, 2,000 people, you could have still kept, had you been there, or had they still kept it going, that culture, that root culture that existed? Do you feel that they could have kept that going with the way it's grown?
Culture is simply put all the conversations that you're having in the organization. And so the conversations that you're having at 6 people versus 1,000 people are fundamentally different. Therefore, culture is different. And so back in the early days, we didn't have marketing. We would invest in our employees getting out into the community. So instead of having a marketing department, we paid each of our team members to go to the yoga classes and the fitness classes. And so if you were full time, you got 2 free yoga classes a week. And if you were part time, you got one. And the job was basically to have an authentic conversation with the community, wearing the clothes and representing the brand. That was our marketing. We also invested heavily in professional development of our staff. We had a philosophy that while we're in each other's lives, we help each other achieve our goals. So that meant a couple of things. One is we all needed to set goals. And the goals would be professional, personal, and health related goals. And everybody would be setting goals and everyone would help each other achieve their goals. It wasn't necessarily realistic that we expected that everyone would finish their careers at the company. That wasn't what happened in retail. But what we knew is that if we invested time and attention into helping people achieve their goals, then while we were in each other's lives, we would help support each other. Because we had this mentality, because we had everybody work the retail floor at least one shift a week in head office, and we called our head office the store support center. So we elevated the store experience and the guest experience to the status of the most or the paramount experience of paramount importance. Our culture was that of really creating, wow, it's you customer experience. People were walking into it's like walking into your living room and saying hello, you know? So you really wanted to have the guests to feel that. That was our culture. Those are the conversations that we created. And it was that sustainable. Of course it was sustainable. I know when it started to deteriorate, it started because by the time we were prepping for IPO and had a cash infusion from private equity, the new leaders that were coming in to get us ready for a public offering did not buy into the authenticity of the culture and change the conversations. And it became that's good for you, but not for me. And once there's an authentic breaking of a set entrenched uh, set of orthodoxies, habits, behaviors, when there's two classes of citizen in an organization, then the culture changes. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different. Is it possible that it continued? Of course. Did it? No. The company went on to be profoundly successful with a different group of leaders. Our style was putting our employee base first. At the time, we attracted in our retail stores university educated athletes working in the retail store. We hired athletes that liked doing yoga and invested in them and paid them. And it was a different retail experience than, say, Mark's Work Warehouse or others. Not good, bad, not just different. You know, we had people that could relate to our ideal customer profile, our ICP, our target customer in a very professional and intellectual and intelligent way. And that's why we spent more on our retail team. We didn't need a marketing department. We didn't need a head office visual merchandising department. We just hired smart people in the store and trained them.
It was incredible, like the cult following that Lulu got. Vancouver's never seen anything like it, and I think it's a major accomplishment for everybody that started out at the beginning stages. It was incredible.
Well,
No brand.
2004, I don't know if you remember 2004, we held our first ever warehouse sale and we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into because there was 5 city blocks of queue. We ran 6 caches out of our literal warehouse. There was helicopters overhead.
Wow.
It was very, very crazy and cult following for sure, because things that we could not sell in our store, we raised prices on for the warehouse sale. And the city was full of this stuff that we couldn't sell in the store anymore, but everyone bought at our warehouse sale for more than what we charge in the store. It's irrational. This business is not rational. And because of that, it's hard to think about things rationally and try to train people about rationality, because everything to do with branding is about how people feel and how about people feel about themselves, about their affiliation to you, about being part of something special, about belonging to a certain conversation, a value system. And so, is that a cult? Yeah, it's a bad cult if it's a cult, but can we learn something about that and how to build businesses? Absolutely.
You were wearing Lulu, this was like a magnet. It was amazing. But you're right, because what happens is when there is that, it's all going great until it's not. And depending upon how the public sees, whether it be the founder or the brand, it can go the other way. Now, speaking that way, Lulu has kind of gone everywhere. Didn't really understand it when it was trying to be everything for everyone. I really like the product. I really like Vuari too, though, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Do you see a pathway where Lulu can get back to being the leader of innovation when it comes to lifestyle and activewear?
Yes. You can ask me how?
Yes.
You need an alignment of senior leadership and board that's committed to be different. The conversations that this current group of boards and senior leaders, the conversations that have led them to today are not the same conversations to disrupt themselves and lead with innovation again. Those are different conversations. Can they come from the same people? Possibly. Will they? Unlikely, because the tendency is that humans don't change. And these are the humans that have created this current situation. What's the situation? A lot of inventory, a lot of less great inventory, a lot of non-innovative inventory, way too much merchandise, confusing merchandise. There's no compelling story. And it seems like the brand is scared not to tick anybody off and just wants to please everybody. And if a brand tries to please everybody, you're pleasing nobody. The hardest thing to do in branding is to pick a lane, win in that lane, and piss everyone else off. That is the job of excellent branding.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
We used to play that and people would get pissed off. And so, Chip was the victim of that. A lot of people are pissed off by that guy because he understood that a company cannot be for everybody. It doesn't work. That's not how humans behave. It doesn't behave like humans don't behave like that in any other capacity, and certainly not in apparel, something emotional like apparel.
Younger people don't understand, like, all this incredible groundswell of Lululemon happened before social media, before, information was sent in a nanosecond. So it makes it remarkable, really. I mean, I remember when my friend from the UK, came to Vancouver and she's like, "Oh, we have to go to Lululemon." I remember saying to her, "You've heard of Lululemon?" Anyway, I think one of the brands that's doing great in Vancouver is Strawberry Milk Mob. Are you familiar with them?
Mm-mm.
She's a young girl around 28, 27, 28. She is killing it. If you go on Instagram, I'll send it to you. Strawberry Milk Mob. She sells bathing suits and she started when she was like 23 or 24. She employs her whole family. They're doing millions. And her sister now has a line, something blueberry, something. Now she's doing men's trunks, Pacific Center gave her a kiosk a couple of Christmases ago. She's doing phenomenal. She's taken that whole authenticity. She's very authentic to her brand, her customer, herself. And I mean, I wouldn't wear it. It's definitely it's great stuff. I just, I can't wear that necessarily anymore. And she's not making stuff for me. So in my opinion, she's nailing it.
Well, look at Brandy Melville. That brand pisses off a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And the kids still gravitate towards it.
Yeah. Is it good, bad? It's the wrong question to ask.
So that's an interesting question because me having the school, I get, an interesting cross mix of students and people. Conversations do come up. And do you feel that when a brand gets like Brandy Melville pisses a lot of people off, yet their target market still buys? Do you think when you piss a lot of people off, it turns off business?
So, I mean, it's a second order effect. Your job isn't to piss people off. Your job is to find the brand's ideal customer profile and have them love you.
Right.
Have them obsessed with you. That is your job. The second order effect of that is that some people will not work for your brand and may want to, but it doesn't work. That's a second order effect. So you can either try to accommodate everyone and alienate your tribe that got you your success, right? Or you could just stay true to who you are.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So the beautiful thing about Aritzia is that there's 4, 5, 6, 7 brands under the house of Aritzia, each catering to a different conversation. And so Wilfred doesn't try and be TNA, and TNA doesn't try to be Wilfred. They can exist under an ecosystem. So it is really great that they develop all these different brands under a house.
Yes.
And That's something that Lululemon chose not to do. Why? Because they had other brands. They had a brand called Okoko. So, they could have gone that way and really stayed true, but they didn't. And so it ended up that Lululemon lost sex appeal that we used to have, which is, like it or not, an important factor in retail, fashion, and apparel, and then just over merchandised to try and be everything to everyone. They became the Gap.
Exactly. It's a tough thing, like fashion is there has to be something sexy about it if you're going to be a brand. Aviva, by the way, is the yeah.
There doesn't have to be something sexy about it. Like you can have a brand that's very successful. You can have stores like Mark's Work Warehouse and others that are extremely successful. They're just not sexy. But if you have sexy and you lose sexy, then you lose sexy.
Or if image is part of your brand, and it's sort of like taking liquor out of alcohol or alcohol out of liquor.
Ultimately, it's not like Lululemon ever led with sexy. It led with healthy and led with athletic and led with fitness and led with yoga. The fact that people associated with sexy didn't hurt us.
No, and I think the conversation got changed, which I also think was a setup when the Wilsons were in New York. And then when you watch that interview, that the journalist is not letting go of that she just keeps wanting for him to screw up in some way that they could turn it into a soundbite. And I think that's when that conversation got turned into it's not for fat people.
Those words were never said.
Exactly. Oh, no, I know. Believe me, I know those words were never said, but it's incredible, and that's where I feel that sometimes when you are this figurehead for a brand, that can turn on a dime where it turns against you, depending upon, especially now in this day and age, with all the different sound bites that can get taken out of context.
Yeah, you're right. And so, that's part of this game. And
Yeah.
you want to be public, you're going to have to be prepared for people not to like you.
So what do you think now with this whole different age of social media, AI, all this stuff, for a brand starting out now, for marketing, what do you advise?
Well, I mean, like it really depends what the brand is and who their ideal customer profile is. But if you look at what's happening in the world is that people are infatuated with, being on this. And because of that, they're missing something. And they're missing human connection. So brands have to lead with that. Brands have to lead with bringing humans together. And what does that look like? It really depends on the brand. But if I was to start a cult today, I would need a congregation. I would need a dogma. I would need rites of passage and rituals. I would need aspirational apostles. I can create that. Lululemon had that, each of those things. And so what about your brand? Who are the apostles? The people who preach the values of your brand and are aspirational to people in your ideal customer profile, your tribe. Who are they? Can you create that? Of course you can. And for every brand, it will be different, but you can organize your brand around a vision of how humans contemplate who they want to be with, because it's the humans that purchase, right? So in deep technology programs, we often say that the best technology doesn't win. Only when humans purchase the technology does the technology win. Therefore, disruption is not a technology problem to solve. It's not a technological problem to solve. It's a human problem to solve. You need to create a willingness to pay. Well, brands are no different. If there's nobody willing to pay, you don't have a successful brand. So how do you entice a willingness to pay? And a willingness to pay is about affiliation, and it's about an emotional resonance, and it's how people feel about themselves when they're contemplating their relationship with your brand. Does that have anything to do with your product? Could, yes, but has more about how they feel. So how are you shaping how they feel? What stories are you telling? Who's telling your stories? How are people engaging? If I look at the next big generation of consumer, I think about my children's generation, and that is Gen Z. They are the healthiest generation in human history. They count their macros, they invest, they don't drink, are engaged politically. That they embrace memes. Meme is a language, is a language to them. And I see a lot of deep thinking around that. And even though it is silly and goofy and in many cases meant to not have meaning, it has meaning. And because it's affiliation and it's I see you. And that is a human experience that this generation has that our generation didn't have, because the I got my first email when I was 24 years old because that's when the internet happened, right? And so, digital natives see each other in ways that we can't understand unless we observe. And so that is the interesting thing about the next generation. But what are they missing? They're missing a place where they can hang out and connect. So Gen Z is missing a place to gather, because in our day we gathered in bars and pubs and clubs. But if you don't drink alcohol, those are places that are less important to you. And fitness clubs are not designed for gathering. They're not designed as third places. Coffee shops are fine, but what do you do at night? Why not your brand? Why not some affiliation? Why not some mechanism for people to connect so that they can find their tribe? If I was to think about building a brand today, I would think about the commonalities with how ancient humans built religions. Religions are basically stories and rites and habits and rites of passage and rituals and dogma by apostles and spiritual leaders that followed certain dogma. We can have that in a brand, and you can create that and you can manifest that. Lululemon had the manifesto. That was our dogma. It was a poster on a wall of certain sayings. We had our apostles. They were our ambassadors. There were pictures on the wall. They exist in digital form called influencers today and micro influencers, right? And back in the day before the internet, they were just people who could fill up a yoga class as an instructor Tuesdays at 1 p.m. and have a lineup up the door. Those were micro influencers in our neighborhoods, right? So who are the influencers that can convey a values aligned message on your behalf because they believe in the cause and the mission, and how do they congregate? You can create that as a brand leader today. And that's what's missing. People want to affiliate. People want to believe. People want to join in and be part of something. That's human nature.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So now tell us a little bit about Creative Destruction Lab. You run this. Tell us a little bit about what that is and what you guys do there.
So Creative Destruction Lab is a deep technology mentorship program helping support PhD founders and researchers and technologists that are looking to convert their research into commercial businesses for the betterment of the human condition. So what we do is I run the UBC Sauder School of Business CDL Vancouver site. This program was started originally at University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management, and it's now at 16 universities around the world.
Wow, it's amazing.
We let uh, we let 80 ventures a year go through our program, 20 in climate technologies, 20 in compute technologies, 20 in minerals technologies, and 20 in biomedical engineering technologies, all with the mission of leaving the world better because of them. And what we do is we match them with mentors who themselves are entrepreneurs who've owned, operated, and exited ventures. And the premise is that an entrepreneur, a new founder has 1,000 things they can do every day, but seasoned entrepreneurial judgment that comes from entrepreneurs who have already owned, operated, and exited businesses, can help synthesize those priorities into the top 3 objectives in the next 8-week sprint. That's what we do. We basically curate a marketplace so that people can connect and build some very compelling businesses based on the coolest, most innovative deep tech in the world. We have supported in 10 years over $7 billion of equity creation for these deep tech startups. Everything is AI now, and this kind of program really helps accelerate these kinds of technologies. So that's what we do. Students get involved. I teach 4 courses at UBC in support of this program. And this is all part of something called the Founders Lab at UBC Sauder. The Founders Lab has Creative Destruction Lab. It has a scale-up program, which is more Series A ready, helping founders transition into CEOs. And then we run challenges and conferences and other things as well. So I run these programs in the entrepreneurship side of the Sauder School of Business and have been there for 10 years, and it's super fun.
Do you love it?
Yeah, there's nothing better. Nothing better.
There's a great satisfaction that does come with it.
Yeah, unquestionably. I mean, ultimately, uh, what's happening in with AI enabled biomedical engineering and advanced therapies and therapeutics is that, we're inventing new kinds of human skin, new muscles, new joints and ligaments to help enable surgeons to keep people alive and out of pain much more, whether it's burn victims or accident victims. This is really compelling technology. You can imagine a device that can reprint human skin. This is the kind of technology that we're helping to support. And that's just on that side. Think about our need for critical minerals to advance AI and advance human potential. A lot of our technologies are able to support the sustainability element of that, to reduce the carbon footprint of mining precious metals and precious minerals, whether it's treating tail ponds with remediation techniques to make it clean water again, increasing our exploration abilities using really interesting hypospectral imaging and other advanced imaging techniques so we can be better at finding these technologies being less invasive to our earth. There's a big water scarcity coming in the world. And so how do we create more water? This is a core focus of ours, as well as alternative energy to get out of extraction. This is what we focus on a daily basis. And we're bringing together the best minds in the world in order to solve these major existential problems in the world.
How fascinating. That's super interesting. Talking about AI, when you see students now, and I see it in our students, I mean, in apparel, AI is just going to, in my opinion, create more jobs. Certain jobs are going to go away, but I feel that more jobs are going to be created due to the different technologies in the apparel and lifestyle industry. But I do see in young adults, their hopelessness is the wrong word, but it's almost like a defeat. They don't see how they're going to get there, whether it be the cost of living, whether it be AI, whether it be whatever's going on in the world. And I find it interesting because speaking to you, starting out selling zippers to being, one of six at Lulu to seeing and being part of the growth of a worldwide brand to being at UBC to heading up, this lab that you're heading up I don't know if young adults sort of see it's a journey. We did because we saw our parents. But, like you said, they saw the phone and they see instant amazingness. And I feel that the bit of a defeatedness feeling comes from that. A question. So I'm wondering, like, do you see the same thing at UBC or do you see the same thing, in the young people that you mix with?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about UBC is it's hard to get into, and so we have some of the most intelligent kids in the world in our university. And yet, what should I do next is the
Yeah.
biggest pervasive problem or question that I get. Where do I go from here? And I think that's a question that so many people contemplate. So when I think about answering that question, I ask people to consider that they're asking the wrong question. So the question shouldn't be, what should I do next? The question should be, where am I in 10 years? If I could imagine what my life looks like in 10 years, and that is geographically, educationally, spiritually, day-to-day habits, we tend to, as humans, overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10 years. But if we can create a context for our current decision making, it is helpful in our current decision making. So if you can imagine a world in 10 years where, I'm in the entrepreneurship department, so oftentimes the question is, when should I start my business? Because I'm dealing mostly with student entrepreneurs. But if you're a science student, as an example, or if you're somebody who aspires to have a fashion brand, the question is, what does my life look like in 10 years? Who do I want to be every day? Do I want to be the designer and the creator, or do I want to be the owner and the operator? Do I want to be making the HR decisions and the accounting decisions and the financial decisions, or do I want to be building cool product? There is no right answer or wrong answer, but there has to be an answer. Where do you want to live? What do you want your family life to be like? What do you want your lifestyle to be like? Can you envision a future that you can live into? This takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of self-knowledge. And most students that I deal with don't have that self-awareness because they haven't reflected. Why? That they haven't spent the time to think about it, to journal, to understand, to create a self-awareness such that they even understand who they really are. That's the first step. In order for you to contemplate 10 years, you kind of have to know yourself. Once you get to knowing yourself such that you're able to envision a future that you can live into 10 years from now, then the work is, what are the skills, knowledge, experience, network effort, network credibility, and expertise required to make that happen? Can you break it down and really understand? And then you question, where can I get these things? Where can I get the skills? Maybe at the cut, I can get skills at the cut. I can get experience at the cut, right? What can I get? A network? Can I get, expertise is what you're great at. Credibility is what people think you're great at, and you need both, right? In order to get that ideal job, oftentimes it's who you know. Where can I meet people? And students, when thinking what job they should do next, overvalue the fact that their job is the most important thing in their life when it really isn't, because you can learn things outside of work. You can meet people outside of work. You can gain skills outside of work. You can gain experience outside of work, and you can create things outside of work. Your work helps you, but it either helps you achieve that vision or it doesn't. It takes the pressure off for making the wrong decision about what's next. But the journey is about contemplation. I didn't learn any of this until my 30s. And I was still alive. But if you're starting this journey of self-awareness now, really understanding, what do I love? What do I hate? What do I gravitate towards? What do I procrastinate? What do I not procrastinate? What do I really think about when I go online and I start researching something? Do I go down rabbit holes or do I stay at a superficial level? What does that say about me? If I do go down rabbit holes, what rabbit holes do I go down to? And what does that say about me? Who do I like to be every day? How do I like to relate with others when I'm hanging out with my friends? What's my role in the equation when I'm on teams? What's my role on the equation? The more you kind of step outside yourself and analyze who you are, the better your ability to have a foundational platform from which you can declare a 10-year vision for yourself. If you're not doing that work, then you're guessing, and you cannot guess your way to happiness, and you cannot guess your way to success. So you have to do that work.
Yeah, I fully agree. I don't think I started that really until my early 30s. And a
Mhm.
lot of that had to do with being miserable. So I had to kind of take a look and see. I had factories and I didn't understand why anybody needed a polar fleece vest, let alone me making it for them. I remember one day saying that to a client when they were getting upset that we were going to be, 2 days late for shipping. It's an interesting state that you get to. But I feel that that's very true. We're not taught to plan. And still in school, in high school, or in university, there's no life planning. So exactly what you said, where do you see yourself in 10 years and how do you build a life to live into like that it's very clearly and well put.
So I teach this course called Disruption. 1/3 of the course is the psychology of entrepreneurship. There's this research around conformity. Solomon Ash was the originator of this research 60 years ago, 50 years ago. And what he did was he put a whole bunch of people in a room and he asked them fairly obvious questions, but the research was around how people behave when some paid actors knowingly gave the wrong answer. And how would other people react when a huge group would say, this is the wrong answer? Would they stand up and say, that's wrong in the face of everybody? Or would they conform to the masses and have groupthink? And up to 75% of the time, people would just say, I conform and I knowingly go with the wrong answer. That was the beginning of this conformity mentality. And then there was this research that continued and unfolded. And then there's this brain researcher called Gregory Burns, and he published a book called Iconoclast. And he took this research and did fMRI studies on the human brain. And he discovered that humans had not only a psychological pain of nonconformity, but a physiological pain and discomfort. People would have physical discomfort by standing out from the crowd. It is a human physiological state of conforming to the masses and being part of a group, because in the dinosaur times, that's how we stayed alive.
Right. Survival.
Survival. So who are you? Are you really the one to stand out from the crowd and do so knowingly? Or are you part of the conformity? People want to be the iconoclast, the ones to stand out. Vast majority aren't, and that's okay. It's okay. So we just need to understand ourselves so we can set ourselves up for happiness.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. All right. Now, while we're winding this down, I'm going to ask you this because I think that a lot of people in their younger years get stuck if they make a mistake. So tell us, have you made a mistake in your life? And if so, which one stays with you?
Again, I'm going to just attack the premise of this question, because Is there a day you don't make a mistake? You're always making mistakes. You're always getting it wrong. If you're burdened by making mistakes, then you do not achieve very much. I think that we have this tension of trying to look good and be great all the time. And we think that's really important until we really understand that most people don't spend a lot of time thinking about us. We really have an oversized self impression, and our desire to look good is probably our biggest factor in our lack of happiness. If we embrace our mistakes, if we practice making mistakes, if we practice who we are when we make mistakes, we are happier. So the question is not, do we make mistakes? The question is who we are in the face of our mistakes.
Mhm.
Because if you want to achieve anything, you're constantly making mistakes. I've been part of over a dozen failed companies. That's more than anybody will ever try. Most people will ever try. You have to fail all the time,
Yeah.
or you do not achieve anything. Really, what your reflection should be is, who am I being right now in this moment? Because the past is not something that you can control. Unless at the cut, do you guys have these time machines? Do you have a time machine where you can go back in time? You don't have that at the cut? No? Just so there's no way to go back in time.
No DeLorean.
Oh, no DeLorean? Okay. So your past is fixed.
Past is fixed.
Okay. So being angry and confused and annoyed at your past is not helpful, is it?
Drop it like a hot potato.
Yeah. And yet, how many people live their life in this direction?
Absolutely.
So, part of, I think, my parenting journey is getting my kids to be okay with failing. And we were lucky enough to really support them in their failure journey. And they're good failures now. And that's
That's
a good thing.
excellent. That's excellent. And that's a great way to put it and parent. My mistake was not so much what happened. And it's exactly what you said, is taking a look at who I was. And what I did was give my power over and thought somebody else thought would be good for my business, overrode what I thought and what my gut wanted.
Mm.
Whatever reason, I gave more worth to their opinion. And it took, and then sitting on it and then feeling lousy about it for far too long, and taking too long to get to the point of saying, hey, wait, who was I? And why did I give my power over to thinking that what that person thought had more weight in my business than what I knew? So I wish I got there sooner.
You wouldn't have got there if you didn't stop to think about it.
Exactly.
And
And
so
that's
many people would rather bury their head and not contemplate and confront themselves than go deep on how they're feeling. Last summer I did a 10-day Vipassana silent meditation retreat. And on the 10th day, when we could talk again, and we were segregated men and women, so I was talking to the men. A couple of the men said, I had feelings. I was like, yeah. There's no,
yeah. Yeah. Sounds like a great place to end. Thank you so much. Say hi to Kennedy.